In second grade, we're learning all about Native Americans, and we're doing a series of art projects having to do with Native Americans. And one of the groups that we're learning about are called the Plains Indians. And by the way, when we talk about Native Americans, we're talking about the first people who lived in our country before any European, African, or Asian settlers came in. These are the first peoples. And here we've got a map of the United States. And the plains make up a huge part of the center of the United States. And in this map, it's the whole blue part. And you can see that it stretches all the way from Texas north into Canada. So you can see it's a huge part. And one of the things that characterizes the Great Plains, when we talk about plains, we're not talking about airplanes, spelled differently. The plains, Plains, are actually huge areas of grass. Sometimes they're also called prairie. And on those huge areas of grass, there used to roam bison. Thousands and thousands and thousands of bison. And so the Plains Indian tribes, of which, by the way, there were like 1,000 of them. So there's not just one tribe. You can see it's a huge area. And all the different tribes would live there, and one of their main sources of food and sustenance were the bison. So they would follow the buffalo, and they would hunt the buffalo, and they would use almost every part of the buffalo to eat, and for their clothing, and for their homes, and for tools. So you can see it is a huge area. Okay, kiddos, as you can imagine, Miss Teal loves this story. And the reason I love this story is because I'm an art teacher. So kids like Little Gopher and you are near and dear to my heart. We can't all be warriors. Or maybe you can. Part of my job as a teacher is hopefully to help you find out what your special gifts are. And I love that Little Gopher's gift was art. So we're going to be a little like Little Gopher today, or he who brought sunset to the earth. As you know, because he was brave, he did something wonderful for his people, so he got a name change. We are going to be like him, and we are going to look in nature and try to find some art supplies, just like he used to do. I've got my handy dandy little yogurt cup. You know I love my yogurt cups. And we are gonna go walking around outside to look for some things that we might be able to turn into paint. So ask your moms and dads if you can go outside, bring your brother and sister along with you, and let's hunt for some art supplies. Ready? Let's go. Okay, kids, so there are do's and don'ts when we're outside collecting. I'm in my yard here, and I see weeds. Definitely a do. Let's explore. Let's figure out what kind of weeds. So here's some kind of a flower. I don't know whether it's going to create any kind of color, but let's find out. And I see a big old dandelion. I'm really curious about that. So I'm going to collect that. That is okay. Now, if you go to a neighbor's house and they're growing some beautiful pansies, daffodils, irises, don't pick those. They might be really mad and sad if you take that. But try some other natural things. Let's keep looking. Okay, so this is a don't. Here is a beautiful daffodil. Someone will be really sad if we smash that up to try to turn it into paint. But fair game. Let's look in here. Maybe I can collect a little of the dirt. That's why Miss Teal brought this container. I'm gonna put a little leaves and some of the dirt in there, and we'll see what that turns into. Okay, so it's springtime right now, and so we've got these beautiful cherries in bloom, and these have already started to drop their blossoms. So I'm going to collect. I'm seeing some color there, and I'm curious about whether that's going to turn into paint. And I also see the petals. Now the petals are really a white, light pink, so I don't think we're going to get too much color out of that. But the base of the flower does have a lot of color. So let's see if that turns into something when we smush it up. Okay, so I'm walking in my neighborhood and I see some grass that has clover patches, just like mine. So I'm gonna pick a few clover pieces here. These have sort of rounder petals. And I'm curious to see whether I can smush those into paint. And here is a don't. Here somebody has planted these beautiful daffodils, and I don't remember what those are called, but those are clearly part of ground cover. We don't wanna hurt anybody's flowers by doing that. But look over there. Look at that beautiful tree with the huge petals. Let's go check those out. All right, so look, they're already on the ground. I'm gonna take a whole bunch of these and see what it turns to back in the house. So I'm curious about that color in the petal, and I'm wondering if that is gonna turn to any kind of pigment. And I think we have enough things here for our exploration. let's go back to the house and find out how it turns. Thanks for going outside with me, guys. So back to the story. Little Gopher was a Plains Indian, and you know the time that we're talking about in this book was probably like 150 years ago, 200 years ago. So when he wanted to make art, could he go to Walmart? Could he go to Michael's or AC Moore or order from Dick Blick? Nope. He had to go and find his things in nature, just like we just did. And just so you know, it wasn't just a Native American thing. Artists have been doing it since the beginning of time. When we talk about cave paintings that are thousands and thousands of years old, people created art out of the natural objects that they found. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So here is our little yogurt cup, and I'm just going to dump it out here on the paper, and we'll see what little treasures we found outside. We've got the petals from the tree. These are huge. Look how big those are. We've got some dandelions, and we've got clover here, plus some other kinds of weeds. I have no idea what they're called. We've got a few little ants. We've got the cherry blossoms where the petals were holding in. I'm really curious about those. Some wood chips out there, and we also just have some dirt. So I'm gonna just dump that on this white piece of paper. So at home, really all you need is paper. I pulled out a paintbrush, but I might even use my fingers, or I might just mix a little water. I put a little water in there in case I wanted to try mixing that up. So I'm gonna dump it out. And we're just going to go one thing at a time. You should also know that this is like a science experiment. I'm not exactly sure which ones are going to turn into color and pigment and which ones are just going to be dirty. So let's explore, guys. Let's explore. Okay, so dandelion. Let's start with the dandelion. I'm going to make a print. Oh, dude. Totally got some yellow there. Can you see that? Very cool. And I'm guessing that is the pollen that is transferring from that flower. Oh my God, yes, that is so cool. So I am making a dot pattern using the dandelion, and it is a beautiful yellow, just like you see on the flower that has been picked. That is so cool. So if an artist was trying to make something with this, I wonder if they would mix it with water. Maybe I'll pull some of that out. Oh, it's all, that's so cool. So guys, we could also turn this into a science and observation project where we draw these. So parents, if you want to do that with your kiddos afterwards, you can also spend some time sketching. So yeah, every time I rub this dandelion on the paper, I am making yellow. So maybe little Gopher would have liked this. That would have been a good color for his sunset. All right, score. Okay, now I pulled some clover. This is about all that grows in my yard as far as grass is concerned. So now I'm curious to see whether I will get any green. So let's squish it down. Well, okay. If any of you guys ever play soccer or football and you tumble around, or maybe you wrestle in the grass, then you might be familiar with this. This is probably what your shorts look like. So I'm getting color, but it took a little bit of work. The first time I smushed it down, I didn't get a whole lot, but check this out. That is pretty cool. You guys see the green? So yeah. Okay, Clover is working. So far, we are 2 for 2. Okay, now this is the cherry blossoms. The petals have fallen off, and of course the petals are white anyways with a blush pink color. So I wouldn't have expected that to show me much color here. But look, the base of it is this darker pink. Let's see if that turns into anything. It did! This is so cool, guys. I'm using some things I've never done before. Oh yeah. All right. Okay. So normally I would have you guys in real life and I would ask you how different that is from the object. So here's the object. I don't know if you can tell the color. It's like a pinkish red color. So I wouldn't call it hot pink, but I would call it a dark pink. And let's look at how it turns to the paper. Maybe that's a little easier. So on the paper, I'm gonna say it's more of a purple color. So it's darker when it's been rubbed on the paper. All right, we're 3 for 3. Woodchip. What do we think? I'm not going to say it's a complete bust, but I'm not seeing a whole lot. I'm going to dip it in the water and see if that changes anything. Okay. Okay, it did create a little pigment, but not nearly as noticeable. I think you're gonna have to get up really close. That is just the lightest of tan colors. But I should tell you that if I burned this, and please don't do that at home. That's a big don't. But artists who paint and draw with, draw with charcoal, basically it's like burned pieces of wood. And if you burned it, or if you had it out of the fire, like if you were making s'mores, if you're camping, and you took an old piece of wood the next day, you could in fact draw with that. That is where charcoal comes from. So right now, I would say, but again, if it was burnt wood, the charred part would create some drawing. Okay, let's find out about these. These were the really big petals that were coming down off. It's springtime right now when I'm making this, so let's see what happens. The white, what do we think that's going to make any color? Probably not. That would be my scientific hypothesis. Okay. It is mushy, and you could feel the moisture in the petal. It falls apart right away. And now let's try. Oh, and it even has layers, guys. If you can see up close, there's even layers, almost like there's skin tissue here. That's so cool. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I never would have guessed that would have happened. I would have thought it would have stayed one piece. So that's pretty cool. Okay, now let's see. So the top layer comes right off. And then as far as the color, if I was instead making a collage project and just trying to glue that top layer, but instead, what surprises me is that the color I've gotten isn't pink at all. What's left behind is more of like a yellowy color, almost like an orange color. So that is not what I would have expected from that. So that's kind of a surprise. It is creating pigment, but just not the color I would have expected. And it was really moist. If you can see, it's just all that moisture transferred right over there. Okay, I'm almost done with all the things that I've collected. I hope you have had fun collecting things. Here is one of my weeds with a little flower. Let's see. Ooh, so that, on the other hand, did make a nice purple color, very similar to the color on the little flower itself. So pretty cool. And the last thing I have here is some dirt that I collected. I'm probably going to do another video having to do with mud paintings of Mali. Here is some dirt right here, and I can rub it. And actually rubbing it does give me a darker brown than I got either from that petal or from the wood chip. And if I use my paintbrush, mixed a little bit of water with the dirt, then it gets even darker. So that I could definitely be making a picture with that dirt. Okay. Ta-da! Now, sometimes at Maury, I am not able to take the kids outside on a nature walk because the weather isn't very good. And so what I do in those situations is kind of cheap. And I kind of bring fruit for the kids because I want to be just like little Gopher. And if you remember in the story, he pounds and he crushes the berries, and he paints things with those crushed berries. So here I have a fresh strawberry, and I have a frozen raspberry and some frozen blueberries. So let's try that out. And it feels kind of cool in your hands. It's totally mushy and cold, the frozen ones. So let's go with the frozen raspberry, and let's see what happens. Oh yeah. Okay, now I can see why little Gopher used the berries. That turned out awesome. And you can see you can really get pattern with that. That's usually what I like to do at Maury's. I normally like to do a pattern project with this. So instead of painting, you're going to get a new piece because I filled that one up with dirt. Not with dirt, with all those experiments. So here, I would normally ask my students to create a pattern. And you don't even need a paintbrush for this. You can just keep using the fruit until it really disintegrates in your fingers. Okay, next berry. So that was a raspberry. Next, I'm going to use a blueberry. Ooh, check that out. Okay, and by the way, guys, usually parents tell you to not play with your food. Miss Tio's telling you, play with your food, okay? Tell your parents I said you play with your food. Now, you gotta look at this one up close. The juice started out like this pinkish purple color, And do you see what happens as it starts to dry? What are you guys noticing there about the blueberry? So it's two really different colors when I've got the juice. And I'm gonna do a pattern just like I did with the raspberry. And I'm seeing something changing. So it starts out more of a pink, a hot pink, and then it turns to a bluish purple. That is so cool. So it's like science. There must be something happening, some development there. Now this is a fresh strawberry. I just pulled it out of my refrigerator, and let's see how that compares with the raspberry and the blueberry. Let's do a zigzag. Ooh, dude, this is a little disappointing. I'm gonna break it down and see if that doesn't make it a little bit juicier for my fingers here. Maybe that was a problem. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm doing a zigzag pattern. You can practice your patterns. And as we start here, it is making a pattern. I am making a picture with all of these berries, but the strawberry so far, what are you noticing is different between the raspberry, the blueberry, and the strawberry? Think about that. I'm noticing that the color is a little bit pinker. It's definitely lighter. The other colors are darker, especially the blueberry has more pigment in it. And this one is like a light pink. I'm not noticing the color change as much. That was also something that really was different from the blueberry, was the change. Now, before we finish this, the last thing I want to tell you, I mentioned how the old cave paintings that are thousands and thousands of years old, artists have always figured out natural materials to use to make art. Even famous artists like Leonardo da Vinci did the same thing. So we're talking Renaissance. This is like 500 years ago. Leonardo was a famous Italian artist, considered one of the great geniuses of all time. And those artists also didn't have Dick Blick or Michaels. They might have had vendors that helped to crush things to turn into pigments, but they also might have used things like spices. So I pulled these out of my spice rack, and maybe your moms or dads won't mind if you do the same with theirs. You can experiment a little bit with that. And in years past, I have done different projects with kids where we try mixing different mediums. So artists might have used oil to suspend pigments. They might have used egg tempera to help suspend the pigments, or they might have used water to do it. Here we're just going to use water. I have just a little bit here, and I'm going to sprinkle the turmeric. This is something that's often in curry. Whoop. And people, if your parents may know, it's really healthy for you, so a lot of people try to put it in their food. So I'm going to just sprinkle a little bit on this paper that we've done all the berries. Woo! It has a really rich, like a mustardy yellow. We'll call it a turmeric yellow. And I'm going to clean the dirt off the brush. And now I'm going to mix it a little bit. Oh yeah, that totally makes a paint there. So this one, I would say, the dandelion is still pretty bright yellow, but this one has it's a darker yellow, almost an orangey yellow. So yes, we could definitely turn this turmeric into paint. And then here I have just a little paprika. This is a pepper. It's like, ooh, Jess was cooking with this the other day, and this will be the last thing that we do. And I'm going to clean my brush first to get the turmeric off. And then I'm just going to mix a little bit here and see how it works. Now this one's interesting. It looked dark red, almost brown, but when I wet it up, it turns more of an orange color. So that surprises me. The turmeric stayed closer to real life, whereas that chili powder or paprika did not. And the last thing before we finish up today, let me just compare. So this is the dandelion that we collected outside, and that's the turmeric. So that one is still staying really true color. With yellow, it hasn't changed in the few minutes since Miss Tio's been talking. It's a lighter yellow, and that one's just a darker orangey brownish yellow. So you can experiment, and then you can decide for yourself, would you rather work with natural materials, or would you rather have the art supplies that you get in Miss Tio's class or at home when you get Crayola markers or crayons? Anyways, thanks for exploring with me. Now you know you can do this anytime outside if your moms and dads let you. Thanks for making art with me.